Maria Johnson couldn't shake the feeling that something was off that Saturday morning. The Texas sun streamed through the bedroom windows of her suburban Austin home, casting warm patches of light on the hardwood floors. She'd been married to Peter for 7 years, and their life together had settled into a comfortable routine. Maybe too comfortable. She was dusting their bedroom, something she did every weekend while Peter was at his tennis club. The same old routine. Wipe down the dresser, arrange the photos, clean the mirrors. But today, as she adjusted a silver-framed wedding photo on their bedside table, she noticed something strange. A tiny red light, barely visible, blinked behind the frame. "What the hell?" Maria muttered, moving the frame aside. Her stomach dropped as she discovered a small camera embedded in the wall, its lens pointed directly at their bed. For a moment, she stood frozen, her cleaning cloth dangling forgotten from her hand. The camera looked expensive, professionally installed. This wasn't some quick DIY job. Someone had cut into the wall to place it there. Her first thought was that they'd been targeted by criminals, but something didn't add up. The camera was positioned to watch their most intimate moments, and the installation looked too precise, too familiar with the house's layout. Maria's hands started shaking as she realized there was only one person who could have done this. She began searching the room systematically, her heart pounding harder with each new discovery. Another camera hidden in their closet, disguised as a coat hook. A third one tucked into the air vent near the ceiling. Each finding made her feel more violated, more betrayed. Moving to their ensuite bathroom, Maria found 2 more cameras, one behind the mirror, another above the shower. She felt sick. How long had these been here? How many times had she unknowingly been watched in her most private moments? The rest of the house yielded more horrible surprises. The kitchen had 3 cameras, one in the light fixture, another near the sink, and a third by the back door. The living room was even worse, with cameras monitoring every angle. She counted 15 devices in total, all carefully hidden but strategically placed to capture every moment of her daily life. Maria sat on the couch, her mind racing. Peter, her quiet, dependable husband, had turned their home into a surveillance prison. The man who brought her coffee in bed on Sundays, who remembered every anniversary with thoughtful gifts, who insisted on hosting neighborhood barbecues, that same man had been secretly watching her every move. She thought about their life together, trying to pinpoint when things had changed. Peter had always been protective, sure. He liked knowing where she was going and when she'd be back. He'd installed a security system last year, saying the neighborhood wasn't as safe as it used to be. Had she missed the signs? Had they always been there, hidden behind his gentle smile and concerned eyes? The sound of Peter's car pulling into the driveway made her jump. She quickly wiped away her tears and tried to steady her breathing. Should she confront him? Pretend everything was normal? Run? The front door opened, and Peter called out his usual cheerful greeting. "Honey, I'm home. The guys at tennis were asking when we're having another barbecue." Maria's throat tightened as his footsteps approached the living room. He appeared in the doorway, still in his tennis whites, a gym bag slung over his shoulder. He looked so normal, so familiar, the same Peter she'd always known. But now she saw something else in his eyes, something that made her skin crawl. "We need to talk," Maria said, her voice steadier than she expected. She held up one of the cameras she'd found, watching as Peter's expression shifted from confusion to recognition to something darker. "Oh," he said simply, setting down his gym bag. The casual way he said it, like she'd discovered a surprise birthday present instead of evidence of his betrayal, made her anger flare. "Oh, that's all you have to say? How long have you been spying on me, Peter?" She stood up, clutching the camera so tight her knuckles turned white. "There are cameras everywhere. Everywhere. What kind of sick game are you playing?" Peter's face hardened, and he closed the living room door behind him. "I wouldn't call it a game, Maria. I'd call it protection." "Protection? From what?" "From yourself, mostly." He moved further into the room, and Maria instinctively stepped back. "You're not as careful as you think you are. Always leaving doors unlocked, windows open, talking to strangers, spending hours on your phone." His voice took on an edge she'd never heard before. I need to know you're safe. Maria felt like she was talking to a stranger, wearing her husband's face. Safe? This isn't about safety, Peter. This is about control. You've been watching me in the bathroom, in our bedroom. Those aren't security cameras, they're spy cameras. Don't be dramatic, Peter said, rolling his eyes. I'm your husband. I have a right to know what goes on in my own house. Your house? Maria's voice rose. I live here too. This is supposed to be my home, not a prison. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about. Peter's tone was reasonable, almost condescending, like he was explaining something simple to a child. Besides, you're overreacting. Lots of people have security systems these days. Security systems don't watch people shower. Maria was shouting now, past caring about keeping her voice down. They don't record people sleeping or getting dressed or dash. She stopped, a horrible thought striking her. The footage. Where is it? What are you doing with it? Peter's smile made her blood run cold. That's none of your concern. None of my concern? It's my life. My privacy. Maria felt tears of rage burning in her eyes. I want them gone, Peter. All of them. Now. That's not going to happen. Peter's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. The cameras stay. And if you know what's good for you, you'll forget about this conversation. Maria stared at him, really seeing him for the first time. This wasn't the man she'd married. Or maybe it was, and she'd just been blind to it. Either way, she knew their life together would never be the same. I'm calling the police, she said, reaching for her phone. Peter moved faster than she expected, grabbing her wrist. No, you're not. You're going to calm down, and we're going to have a nice, quiet dinner like we always do on Saturday nights. Nothing has changed, Maria. Nothing needs to change, as long as you behave. Maria yanked her arm free, her heart racing. She saw something in Peter's eyes that terrified her, a cold, calculated look that made her wonder what else she didn't know about her husband. What other secrets was he keeping? What else was he capable of? The perfect suburban life she thought she had was crumbling around her, revealing something dark and twisted underneath. As she stood there, facing the stranger who wore her husband's face, Maria realized this was just the beginning. Whatever game Peter was playing, whatever his true intentions were, she was trapped in something far more dangerous than she could have imagined. And somewhere in the house, hidden cameras recorded it all, their tiny red lights blinking steadily in the growing darkness. Maria spent that night in her car, parked outside a 24-hour grocery store, too scared to go home but too ashamed to call anyone for help. The store's fluorescent lights cast strange shadows across her dashboard as she scrolled through her phone, reading stories from women who'd been through similar situations. Some comments made her blood run cold. Stories of stalking, escalating violence, and partners who seemed normal until they didn't. She opened her social media app, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The urge to share her story, to warn others, was overwhelming. But Peter monitored her online activities. She was sure of it now. Instead, she created a new account under a fake name and started typing. Living with someone who watches your every move is like drowning in slow motion, she wrote. You don't realize you're running out of air until it's almost too late. Today, I found out my husband of 7 years has been recording everything I do. Hidden cameras in our bedroom, our bathroom, everywhere. I thought I knew him. I thought I was safe. Comments started appearing almost immediately. Some people shared their own stories of betrayal and surveillance. Others offered advice, some practical, some frightening. Get out now, one user wrote. Men who do this are capable of anything. Another commented, document everything. Take pictures of the cameras. You'll need proof later. Maria's phone buzzed with a text from Peter. Coming home soon? Dinner's getting cold. The casual tone made her want to throw up. She could picture him sitting in their kitchen, watching the cameras, waiting to see if she'd return to her cage. She typed another message on her anonymous post. The scariest part isn't just the cameras. It's realizing that every moment you thought was private, every vulnerable second, was being watched and recorded. Every time you cried in the shower, every time you talked to yourself in the mirror, every intimate moment, all of it stored somewhere, like some twisted collection. More responses flooded in. People asking if she was safe, offering phone numbers for domestic violence hotlines, sharing their own escape stories. One comment caught her attention. My ex did the same thing. Started with cameras, then tracking my phone, then controlling who I could talk to. Get help now before it gets worse. Maria's hands shook as she read through the responses. These strangers on the internet seemed to understand her situation better than her own family would. They saw the danger she was in, the trap she was caught in. Their words gave her both comfort and terror. Comfort in knowing she wasn't alone. Terror in realizing how dangerous her situation might be. Another text from Peter. Should I be worried? You know I only want what's best for us. The message made her skin crawl. What's best for us? How many times had he used those words to justify his control? She looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror, barely recognizing the scared woman staring back at her. Just yesterday, she'd been living what she thought was a normal life. Now she was sleeping in her car, seeking advice from strangers on the internet, afraid to go back to her own home. The grocery store's lights flickered, making her jump. A few cars drove past, and each one made her heart race, wondering if Peter had come looking for her. She checked her surroundings compulsively, a new habit born of knowing she'd been watched for God knows how long. She turned back to her phone, writing another update. Some of you asked what I'm going to do next. Honestly, I don't know. Everything I own is in that house. My whole life is there. But can I really go back, knowing what I know now? Knowing those cameras are watching? Knowing the man I married isn't who I thought he was? The responses were immediate and overwhelming. Your life is worth more than stuff, one person wrote. You can replace things, not your safety. Another shared, I left with nothing but my purse and my dog. Best decision I ever made, even though it was the hardest. Maria thought about their dog, Max, still at home with Peter. The idea of leaving him behind made her chest tight. Would Peter take his anger out on Max if she didn't come back? She'd never seen him be cruel to animals, but then again, she'd never thought he'd spy on her either. Her phone buzzed again, another text from Peter. I'm starting to get worried. Please come home so we can talk about this like adults. The message was followed by a photo of Max lying on their bed, looking sad. Her heart clenched. Peter knew exactly how to get to her. She turned back to her anonymous post. He's using our dog to guilt me into coming back. Says he wants to talk like adults. But how can you have an adult conversation with someone who's been secretly filming you? How do you trust anything they say? The comments section exploded with warnings. Classic manipulation tactic, someone wrote. He's trying to use your emotions against you. Another person shared. My ex did the same thing with our cat. Don't fall for it. Make a plan first. Maria started reading through older posts on the forum, stories from women who'd been in similar situations. Some had happy endings, restraining orders granted, new lives built, freedom found. Others were darker, stalking that continued for years, violence that escalated when they tried to leave, legal systems that failed to protect them. She looked at the time. Nearly midnight. The parking lot was almost empty now, just her car and a few others scattered across the vast space. The darkness felt oppressive, but not as suffocating as the thought of going back home. With trembling fingers, she made one final post. Thank you all for sharing your stories and advice. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I know I can't ignore this. I can't pretend those cameras aren't there. I can't act like everything's normal. Something has to change. As responses of support and encouragement poured in, Maria realized she'd found something valuable, a community of survivors who understood exactly what she was going through. Their stories, their warnings, their advice, it all painted a clear picture of what she needed to do next. She started the car, but didn't head home. Instead, she drove to a nearby hotel, using cash to pay for the room. As she lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, she thought about all the comments she'd read. So many stories, so many women who'd faced the same betrayal, the same violation of trust. Some had escaped, some hadn't. Tomorrow, she would have to make decisions. But tonight, she took comfort in knowing she wasn't alone. Somewhere out there, other women were fighting the same battle, reclaiming their lives from men who thought they had the right to control them. Their courage would have to be enough to help her face whatever came next. Maria woke up to 27 missed calls and dozens of texts from Peter. Each message grew increasingly desperate, shifting from concern to anger to guilt-tripping and back again. She deleted them all without reading past the previews. The hotel room felt sterile and empty, but at least there weren't any cameras watching her. She called in sick to work, knowing she couldn't face her students at the elementary school today. Her voice must have given something away, because the secretary, Mrs. Torres, asked if everything was really okay. Maria almost broke down right there. Just a bad stomach bug, she lied, hating how easily the deception came. But what could she say? That her husband had turned their home into a surveillance state? That she'd spent the night in a hotel, terrified to go back to her own house? Around noon, her best friend Jessica called. "Girl, where are you? Peter's been calling me all morning saying you didn't come home last night. He showed up at my house looking for you." Maria's heart skipped a beat. "He what?" "Yeah, at 7 this morning. Scared the hell out of me. Said you guys had a fight, and he's worried sick. What's going on?" Maria got up and checked through the hotel room's peephole, half expecting to see Peter in the hallway. "Jess, I need to tell you something, but not over the phone. Can you meet me somewhere?" They agreed to meet at a small coffee shop on the other side of town, one they never usually visited. Maria took a circuitous route there, checking her rearview mirror constantly for Peter's silver BMW. She felt paranoid, but wasn't paranoia justified when you discovered your whole life was under surveillance? Jessica was already waiting at a corner table when Maria arrived. One look at Maria's face, and Jessica's expression shifted from concern to alarm. "Okay, you're scaring me. What's happening?" Maria told her everything, finding the cameras, the confrontation with Peter, spending the night in her car before getting a hotel room. Jessica's face grew darker with each detail. "That son of a bitch," Jessica whispered when Maria finished. "I never liked him, you know that, but this is crazy. Like, actually crazy. You can't go back there." "I have to," Maria said. "All my things are there. My laptop, my documents, Max. Things can be replaced. And we'll figure out how to get Max, but you can't go back to that house alone." Jessica reached across the table and grabbed Maria's hand. "Listen to me carefully, men who do this kind of thing are dangerous. This isn't just about privacy, it's about control." Maria pulled her hand away, wrapping her arms around herself. "You don't understand. It's not that simple. We have a joint account. My car is in his name. Even my cell phone is on his plan. He could track me right now if he wanted to. Then we'll get you a new phone. I've got some cash saved up dash." "No," Maria cut her off. "I can't take your money. And I need to know more. Why he did this. What he's doing with the recordings. There's something else going on, Jess. I can feel it." Jessica leaned back, studying her friend's face. "What are you thinking?" "I need to get into his laptop," Maria said slowly. "He keeps everything on it. Always has it password protected, never leaves it unlocked. There has to be a reason." "This is a bad idea," Jessica said, but Maria could see her friend was already thinking it through. "When would you even have the chance? He takes sleeping pills sometimes. Has trouble with insomnia. If I go home, act like I'm sorry, like I overreacted." Maria's voice trailed off as she realized what she was suggesting. "You want to drug your husband?" No, he takes them himself. I just need to wait until he does. He always passes out within 20 minutes. Maria ran her fingers through her unwashed hair. "I know it sounds crazy, but I need answers, Jess. I need to know what I'm dealing with." Jessica was quiet for a long moment. "Okay, but we do this smart. You text me the moment you get home. Text me when he takes the pills. Text me every hour you're there. If I don't hear from you, I'm calling the cops." Maria nodded, feeling slightly better having a plan, having someone who knew where she was. They spent the next hour working out details, what to say to Peter, what to look for on the laptop, escape routes from the house if things went wrong. When Maria finally went home that evening, Peter was waiting on the porch. He jumped up when her car pulled in, and for a moment she saw genuine relief on his face. It made everything harder. these glimpses of the man she thought she'd married. "Thank God," he said, rushing to her car. "I've been so worried. Where were you? Why didn't you answer my calls?" Maria forced herself to look contrite. "I'm sorry. I needed time to think, to process everything." The lies felt bitter in her mouth. "Can we talk?" Peter's face softened. He reached for her hand, and she made herself not pull away. "Of course we can talk. I ordered your favorite, that Thai curry you like. And I took down the cameras." Maria's head snapped up. All of them. All of them," Peter promised. "You were right. I went too far. I just love you so much, Maria. The thought of anything happening to you." She let him lead her inside, let him show her where he'd removed the cameras. But she noticed he didn't mention what he'd done with them, or with the footage they'd recorded. Over dinner, she watched him talk about his daily. Everything was normal, like he hadn't spent years secretly filming her. Around 10, Peter took his sleeping pill. "Long day," he said with a weak smile. "Haven't slept since you left." Maria waited in bed beside him, counting the minutes, listening as his breathing grew steady and deep. At midnight, she slipped out of bed and went to his home office. The laptop was there, closed but not locked away. Her hands shook as she opened it. The password prompt glowed in the darkness. She tried their wedding date. Nothing. His birthday, nothing. Her birthday, nothing. Then she tried Max's adoption date from the shelter, and the screen unlocked. What she found made her blood run cold. Folders upon folders of surveillance footage, organized by date and room. But that wasn't the worst part. There was a folder labeled Maria's Schedule. Inside were detailed logs of her daily activities going back years. Notes about her phone calls, her text messages, her internet history. Then she found the Contingencies folder. Her throat closed up as she read through documents about life insurance policies she didn't know existed. Draft letters in her voice, explaining why she'd left town suddenly. Bank statements showing large transfers to offshore accounts. Maria sat in the dark office, staring at the screen. Realizing she'd been right, there was something bigger going on. Something much more dangerous than just surveillance. Her hands trembling, she took out her phone and texted Jessica. "I found something, but I wish I hadn't." Jessica's apartment felt like a safe house, though Maria couldn't shake the feeling of being watched even here. She sat on the worn leather couch, clutching a cup of coffee that had long gone cold, while Jessica made calls. "My cousin Mark's a cop," Jessica explained, pacing the small living room. "He knows people. Says we should talk to this private investigator he trusts, guy named Jack Reynolds. Used to be a detective." Maria stared into her coffee. What if Peter finds out? He won't. Jessica sat beside her friend. "Mark's being careful. The PI won't contact your phone directly. Everything goes through my phone or Mark's." They'd spend the morning copying files from Peter's laptop onto a USB drive. Insurance policies, bank statements, those creepy logs of Maria's daily life. Maria had wanted to take more, but Peter had stirred in his sleep, and she'd barely managed to get the laptop back in place before he woke up. "I keep thinking about those letters," Maria said quietly. "The ones that looked like I wrote them. About running away, starting a new life somewhere. Why would he have those?" Jessica squeezed her hand. "That's what we're going to find out." The PI, Jack Reynolds, arrived that afternoon. He wasn't what Maria expected. No trench coat or world-weary expression like in the movies. Instead, he wore jeans and a polo shirt and carried a laptop bag that looked like it had seen better days. "Tell me everything," he said, setting up his laptop on Jessica's coffee table. "Start from the beginning." Maria did. She described finding the cameras, confronting Peter, discovering the files. Jack typed notes, occasionally asking questions about dates, specific details. When she mentioned the offshore accounts, he looked up sharply. "How much money are we talking about?" "I didn't get a good look at all the statements, but one transfer was for $50,000 to some account in the Cayman Islands." Jack whistled low. "That's not personal savings. That's the kind of thing people do when they're either hiding money from the government or setting up a getaway fund." "A getaway fund?" Maria felt sick. Let me make some calls, Jack said. I've got contacts who can look into these accounts. But first, we need to talk about your safety. Your husband's showing classic signs of escalating control behavior. Finding those letters, that's not good. Maria hugged herself. You think he's planning something? I think we need to be careful. Jack pulled out a small notebook. I want you to write down everything you can remember about Peter's behavior over the past few years. Any changes, no matter how small. Friends who disappeared from your lives, sudden interest in new hobbies, unexplained absences. Jessica brought more coffee while Maria wrote. Looking back, there were so many little things she'd dismissed. The security system installation last year. Peter's insistence on handling all their finances. The way he'd gradually convinced her to stop having lunch with her coworkers, saying they were a bad influence. He started taking tennis lessons about 2 years ago, Maria said suddenly, looking up from her notes. Every Saturday morning. But last month I ran into Brian from his office, and he mentioned they missed Peter at their Saturday morning meetings. Jack made a note. So, he's lying about where he goes on Saturdays. And there was this weird thing with his ex-girlfriend. Maria continued, memories flooding back now. I tried to find her on social media once, just out of curiosity. Peter caught me looking and got really angry. Said she was unstable, that I shouldn't go digging into his past. Do you remember her name? Sarah something. Sarah Mitchell, I think. Jack's fingers flew across his keyboard. I'll look into it. In the meantime, we need to get you somewhere safe. Somewhere Peter wouldn't think to look. She can stay with my sister in Houston, Jessica offered. Peter doesn't even know she exists. Maria shook her head. I can't just leave.
My job, Max.
Your job can wait, Jack said firmly. And we'll figure out how to get your dog. But right now, we need to focus on keeping you safe while we investigate. They spent the next few hours making plans. Jack gave Maria a burner phone, showing her how to remove the battery when she wasn't using it. Jessica's sister Kate agreed to take her in, no questions asked. They worked out a cover story for Maria's absence from work, a family emergency in Houston. Very sudden, very urgent. What about Peter? Maria asked. He'll look for me. Let him, Jack said. In fact, it's better if he does. The more energy he spends trying to find you, the less careful he'll be about covering his tracks. That evening, Maria packed a small bag with clothes borrowed from Jessica. Her friend insisted on giving her emergency cash, $500 tucked into an envelope. I'll check on Max every day, Jessica promised. And I'll water your plants, make it look like someone's still coming by the house. Maria hugged her friend tight. I don't know how to thank you. Thank me by staying safe. Jessica pulled back, her eyes serious. And, Maria? Whatever you do, don't contact Peter. No matter what he says or does. Let Jack handle everything. As they finalized the plans for Maria's departure, Jack shared what he'd discovered about Peter's previous relationships. There's a pattern here, he said grimly. Sarah Mitchell isn't the only ex who seems to have vanished. I found 2 others, Rachel Cooper and Lisa Walsh. Both dated Peter before you. Both seemed to disappear suddenly, leaving behind notes about starting new lives. Maria felt the blood drain from her face, just like the letters on his laptop. Jack nodded. We're going to find out what happened to them. But first, we need to get you out of Austin. Peter's got resources we don't know about yet. The less he knows about our investigation, the better. That night, as Maria lay on Jessica's couch trying to sleep, she thought about those other women. Had they found cameras too? Had they confronted Peter? What had happened to make them disappear? She pulled out her burner phone and added another note to her growing list of questions. Tomorrow she'd be in Houston, staying with a stranger, hiding from her husband. But for the first time since finding that first camera, she felt something besides fear. She felt purpose. Maria's plans for a quiet escape fell apart 3 days into her stay in Houston. She was helping Kate, Jessica's sister, make dinner when her burner phone buzzed with a message from Jessica. He found the USB drive. The phone clattered to the counter. Kate looked up from chopping vegetables. Everything okay? Before Maria could answer, another message came through. He's tearing the house apart.
Keeps calling me.
Says he's coming over. Maria's hands shook as she typed back. Don't let him in. Call Jack. What's wrong? Kate asked, setting down her knife. Peter. Maria swallowed hard. He found evidence I took from his laptop. I need to call Jack. The PI answered on the first ring. I already know. Jessica called me. Stay where you are, Maria. Don't do anything. But Maria was already grabbing her borrowed jacket. Jessica's in danger. Peter's never been this angry. He dashed. She stopped as another message came through. This one was from Peter, to her regular phone, which she'd kept turned off until now. I know what you took. You have no idea what you're doing. Come home now, and we can fix this. Don't make me come find you, Maria. Jack's voice was sharp through the phone. Listen to me. This is exactly what he wants. He's trying to force you to show yourself. But Jessica Dash is already on her way to a safe location. We knew this might happen. We've got people watching your house and Jessica's apartment. Peter's not going to find either of you. Kate touched Maria's arm gently. He's right. You need to stay put. But Peter's next message made Maria's blood run cold. Found something interesting about your friend Jessica's sister in Houston. Nice house she has on Oak Street. Maria nearly dropped the phone. They were on Oak Street. He knows, she whispered. Oh God, he knows where I am. Jack was saying something else, but Maria couldn't focus. Her mind was racing. How had Peter found out? Had he followed Jessica? Tracked her phone? Hired someone? Pack a bag, Kate said, already moving. We'll take my car. Go to a hotel. They were halfway to the door when headlights swept across the front windows. A car engine shut off in the driveway. Back door, Kate whispered, pulling Maria toward the kitchen. But they only made it halfway across the room before they heard the sound of a key in the lock. Maria froze. How does he have a key? The front door opened. Peter's voice drifted through the house, casual as if he was coming home from work. Maria? Honey, we need to talk. Kate shoved Maria toward the pantry.
Hide.
I'll stall him. Kate, no dash. Just shut up and hide. Maria squeezed into the pantry, pulling the door nearly closed. Through the crack, she watched Kate walk toward the living room. Can I help you? Kate's voice was steady, but Maria could hear the underlying tension. You must be Kate, Jessica's sister. Peter's footsteps moved closer. I'm Peter, Maria's husband. Is she here?
No.
And you need to leave before I call the police. Peter laughed, but there was no humor in it. The police? That would be interesting. We could tell them all about how you're harboring my wife, how you're helping her hide evidence she stole from her home. I don't know what you're talking about. Kate took a step back. Get out of my house. See, that's the problem with small towns, Peter said, his voice getting closer to the kitchen. Everyone knows everyone, like the locksmith who made me a copy of your key. Friend of your ex-husband, isn't he? Lovely chat we had about your custody situation. Maria's heart pounded. She could see Peter now, standing in the kitchen doorway. He looked different, his usual neat appearance disheveled, his eyes wild. Where is she, Kate? Where's my wife?
Gone.
Far away from you. Peter moved so fast Maria barely saw it. Suddenly, he had Kate's arm, twisting it behind her back. Want to try again? Maria shoved the pantry door open. Let her go. Peter's face lit up. There you are. He released Kate, who stumbled away, grabbing her phone. Don't come any closer, Maria warned, backing toward the back door. Or what? Peter spread his hands. I'm your husband, Maria. I came to bring you home. Why are you acting like I'm some kind of monster? A monster? You spied on me for years. You're hiding money, writing fake letters in my name. What happened to Sarah Mitchell, Peter, and Rachel Cooper, and Lisa Walsh? Something shifted in Peter's expression. The fake concern vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. You shouldn't have gone through my private files. They're not going to disappear like the others, Maria said, her voice shaking. People know what you've done. Jack has copies of everything. Peter took a step forward. Jack Reynolds? The washed-up PI with a drinking problem? Nobody's going to believe him. Just like nobody believed Sarah when she tried to warn them about me. He smiled. You know what they call women who make wild accusations about their husbands? Unstable, paranoid, delusional. The police dash. We'll find a letter in your handwriting explaining how the pressure of teaching was too much. How you needed a fresh start. Maybe in Mexico. Lots of Americans disappear in Mexico. Maria heard sirens in the distance. Kate must have called 911. Peter heard them too. His face hardened. Last chance, Maria. Come home with me now. We'll sort this out. Or things get ugly. They're already ugly. Maria grabbed a knife from the counter. Stay back.
Peter lunged.
Maria slashed wildly, feeling the blade connect. Peter cursed, grabbing his arm where she'd cut him. Blood seeped through his sleeve. The sirens were closer now. Peter looked at his bloody arm, then at Maria, his eyes burning with rage. You're going to regret that. Blue and red lights flooded the kitchen. Car doors slammed outside. Peter's face twisted into a mask of concern. Help, he shouted. She's got a knife. My wife. She's having some kind of breakdown. Maria backed away as heavy footsteps approached the house. Everything was chaos. Police bursting in, Kate trying to explain, Peter playing the concerned husband. Through it all, Maria clutched the knife, knowing that no matter what happened next, there was no going back. The comfortable lie of her marriage was over, replaced by a dangerous truth she was only beginning to understand. The police station's interview room felt smaller by the hour. Maria had told her story 3 times now, finding the cameras, discovering the files, the confrontation at Kate's house. Each time, she watched the officers' expressions shift from skepticism to concern. Mrs. Johnson, Detective Rivera said, sliding a cup of water across the table. We've confirmed there are no current missing persons reports for Sarah Mitchell, Rachel Cooper, or Lisa Walsh. Of course not, Maria said. The letters made it look like they left voluntarily, just like the ones Peter wrote pretending to be me. Rivera nodded, making notes. Mr. Reynolds shared copies of the files you found. Our tech team is analyzing them now. But your husband's lawyer is pushing for your arrest, assault with a deadly weapon. Maria wrapped her arms around herself. The events at Kate's house felt distant now, dreamlike. He came after me. I was defending myself. Ms. Martinez, Kate, confirms your version of events. But Peter's story. Rivera hesitated. He's painting a convincing picture of a troubled wife having a mental breakdown. Says you've been paranoid lately, imagining things. I'm not crazy. Maria's voice cracked. The cameras were real. The files are real. Those women. She took a deep breath. Let me help find them. Please. Rivera studied her for a long moment. Officially, there's no case. No bodies, no evidence of foul play. Just 3 women who decided to start fresh somewhere else. But unofficially? Unofficially, something stinks. The patterns are too similar. The timing, the letters, the life insurance policies. Rivera leaned forward. But we need more than patterns. We need proof. Maria thought about Peter's careful documentation of her life, his meticulous plans. He keeps records of everything. There has to be more evidence somewhere. If there is, we'll find it. In the meantime, Rivera slid a card across the table. The DA wants you to talk to these people. They're experts in domestic violence cases. They can help protect you legally. Maria picked up the card. Women's Justice Alliance. What about Peter? He's still out there. We've got eyes on him. And Judge Martinez granted your emergency restraining order. He can't come near you, your workplace, or contact you directly. Maria almost laughed. Like a piece of paper would stop Peter if he really wanted to get to her. What about Max? My dog. Your friend Jessica already picked him up. He's safe. Rivera's expression softened. Look, I know this is overwhelming, but you've got people in your corner now. Let us help you. The Women's Justice Alliance office became Maria's second home over the next few weeks. Her lawyer, Sarah Chen, worked with Jack to build a case while Maria attended support group meetings and spoke with counselors. Healing isn't linear, her therapist, Dr. Walker, reminded her during their sessions. Some days will be harder than others. Today was one of the hard days. Maria had just learned that Peter had frozen their joint accounts and was contesting her access to their safety deposit box. "He's trying to force me to talk to him," she told Jessica over lunch. "Cutting off my resources, making me desperate." Jessica pushed her salad around her plate. "Mark says they're still watching him. He hasn't left town, hasn't done anything suspicious. That's what worries me." Maria lowered her voice. "He's too quiet. The Peter I saw that night, the real Peter, he's not the type to just give up." She was right. That evening, Sarah Chin called with news. "Peter's filed for divorce. He's claiming mental instability on your part, seeking full control of all assets." Maria sat heavily on Jessica's couch. Max whined and put his head in her lap. "He's trying to discredit me, make me look crazy so nobody believes me about the other women."
Exactly.
"But we can use this." Sarah's voice turned determined. "A divorce means discovery. We can demand access to his financial records, communications, everything. If there's evidence about what happened to those women, we'll find it." The next day, Maria stood before her support group, sharing her story for the first time. The room was full of women who understood, women who'd seen behind their partners' masks, who'd survived and escaped. "The hardest part," she told them, "isn't the fear. It's realizing that every memory is tainted. Every anniversary, every vacation, every quiet moment at home. He was watching, recording, planning. I don't know what was real anymore." After the meeting, a woman named Clara approached her. "My ex was like yours. Cameras everywhere, tracking my phone, controlling everything. I thought I was alone until I found others he'd done it to." Maria's head snapped up. "What happened?" "We worked together. Built a case. He's in prison now."
Clara squeezed Maria's hand.
"The truth comes out, honey. Maybe not as fast as we want, but it comes out." That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She sat in Jessica's spare room, looking through old photos on her phone. Happy moments that now seemed like scenes from a horror movie. Peter smiling at her across dinner tables, Peter hugging her at parties, Peter playing with Max in their backyard. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. "You can't hide forever. Come home before things get worse." Maria's hands shook, but not from fear this time. She was done being afraid, done being a victim in Peter's twisted game. She forwarded the message to Detective Rivera, then called Jack. "I want to find them," she said when he answered. "Sarah, Rachel, Lisa, they deserve justice. We need to know what happened to them." "It's dangerous," Jack warned. "Peter's got resources we don't know about, connections we haven't traced." "I don't care." Maria watched Max sleeping peacefully at her feet. "He's not going to stop. Even if I disappeared tomorrow, he'd just find someone else to control, to hurt. We have to end this." There was a long pause before Jack replied. "Okay, but we do this smart. No risks, no confrontations. We build the case piece by piece until it's too solid for him to slip away." Maria agreed, then sat down at her laptop. She opened a new document and began typing, recording everything she could remember about her life with Peter. Every strange comment, every unexplained absence, every controlled interaction. Somewhere in these details was the truth about what happened to the others. She wouldn't let their stories end in forged letters and offshore accounts. She wouldn't let Peter write their endings anymore. The plan came together on a rainy Tuesday evening. Detective Rivera leaned against her desk, looking at the evidence board they'd built. Photos of Sarah, Rachel, and Lisa stared back at them, connected by red strings to bank statements, travel records, and property deeds. "He's getting sloppy," Rivera said. "Made 3 calls to the Cayman Islands last week. Our financial crimes unit traced transfers linking him to all 3 women." Maria studied the photos. 3 women who'd trusted Peter, just like she had. What about the storage unit? Paid for in cash, but we found security footage of him there last month. Jack pulled up a video on his laptop. Camera caught him moving boxes late at night. Could be nothing. Or could be evidence, Maria finished. "We need to get him to talk about them. About everything." Rivera shook her head. "He's too smart for a direct confession. Lawyers present for every interview. Never slips up. Unless. Maria took a deep breath. Unless he thinks he's winning. Unless he thinks I'm breaking down. Ready to come back. The room went quiet. Jack spoke first. Absolutely not. Too dangerous. It makes sense, Maria insisted. He's been sending messages for weeks, trying to get me to meet him. What if I finally agree? No way, Jessica said from her corner. He'll know it's a trap. Not if we do it right. Maria turned to Rivera. The divorce hearings next week. He thinks he's got me cornered, no money, no home, living on friends' couches. What if I reach out? Say I want to talk things through, find a solution? Rivera crossed her arms. You want to wear a wire. I want to get the truth. About everything. Maria looked at the photos again. They deserve that much. The debate lasted hours. Eventually, a plan formed. Maria would contact Peter, suggest meeting at their old favorite restaurant. Neutral ground, public place. She'd wear a wire, and police would be stationed nearby. The moment he threatens you, we move in, Rivera insisted. No weeks. Maria spent the next few days preparing. She stopped seeing her therapist, missed support group meetings. She called Peter's lawyer, asking about dropping the restraining order. Little breadcrumbs leading him to believe she was cracking. The night before the meeting, she sat with Jessica, both of them watching Max chase shadows in the backyard. I still think this is crazy, Jessica said softly. Probably is. Maria managed a small smile. But I'm done hiding. Done letting him control the story. Just be careful, okay? I've got a bad feeling. That's why we've got backup. Maria touched the pendant around her neck. Inside was a tiny microphone, courtesy of the police department. Nothing can go wrong. But as she lay in bed that night, Maria wondered if she was underestimating Peter. He'd fooled her for years, fooled everyone. What if this was just another game, and she was playing right into his hands? Her phone buzzed. Peter, looking forward to dinner tomorrow. Just like old times. Maria stared at the message, remembering all those dinners they'd shared. How many had been real? How many had been part of his manipulation? No turning back now, she whispered to herself, watching the rain tap against her window. Tomorrow, one way or another, the truth would come out. The restaurant hadn't changed. Same warm lighting, same soft jazz playing overhead, same smell of garlic and wine. Maria sat at their usual corner table, fighting the urge to touch the pendant containing the wire. Peter arrived exactly on time, looking perfectly put together in his charcoal suit. He smiled when he saw her, that familiar warm smile that used to make her heart flutter. Now it just made her skin crawl. You look tired, he said, sitting down. Not sleeping well? Been a rough few weeks. Maria forced herself to meet his eyes. Lot of thinking to do. About coming home? Peter reached across the table for her hand. She let him take it, suppressing a shudder. I've missed you, honey. The house feels empty without you. The waiter came for their drink orders. Peter ordered their usual wine without asking what she wanted. Some habits never changed. I found your letters, Maria said quietly after the waiter left. The ones about me leaving. Peter's smile didn't waver. What letters? Don't. Maria pulled her hand away. I saw everything, Peter. The cameras, the recordings, the offshore accounts. I know about Sarah and Rachel and Lisa. Ah. Peter sat back, studying her. And what exactly do you think you know? I know they disappeared. I know you had letters for them, too. Insurance policies, bank transfers, just like you planned for me. The wine arrived. Peter took a slow sip, watching her over the rim of his glass. Sounds like you've been quite the detective. Working with that PI. What's his name? Jack. I want to know what happened to them. Nothing happened to them. They left. Started new lives. Just like you were planning to do, wasn't it? Before you found the cameras? Maria's hand tightened around her water glass. What are you talking about? Those texts with Jessica about looking for teaching jobs in California? The research on apartment rentals in San Diego. Peter's voice was soft, reasonable. You were planning to leave me, Maria. I just wanted to be prepared. You're lying. Am I? Check your phone records. Or did you delete those conversations when you started playing detective? Peter leaned forward. I protect what's mine, Maria. Sometimes that means watching, waiting, planning ahead. Those other women, they made choices. Bad choices. Did they? Maria's voice shook. Or did you make those choices for them? Peter's smile turned cold. Careful, honey. You're starting to sound paranoid. Unstable. Just like the others when they started asking too many questions. Is that what this is about? Control? Making sure no one leaves you. It's about justice. Peter took another sip of wine. They betrayed my trust. Just like you did. Actions have consequences, Maria. Where are they? Starting fresh. New lives, new identities. Better this way, don't you think? Clean breaks, no messy explanations. His voice hardened. Of course, some breaks are messier than others. Maria felt cold despite the warm restaurant. Is that a threat? A reality check. You've got two choices here. Come home, forget about all this nonsense, let me take care of you. Or, he shrugged. Well, Mexico is lovely this time of year. Lots of places a person could disappear. I recorded everything you just said. Maria touched her pendant. The police are outside. Peter's smile widened. I know. Just like I know about the wire in that tacky necklace. Did you really think I wouldn't have this place watched? That I wouldn't have people inside the department? Maria's blood ran cold. She looked around the restaurant, suddenly aware of how many strangers surrounded them. The cameras were just the beginning, Peter continued calmly. You have no idea how deep this goes, how many people are involved. Those women they found out had to be dealt with, just like you'll have to be dealt with. Maria stood up, but Peter grabbed her wrist. Sit down, honey. You're making a scene. Let go of me. Maria? Detective Rivera's voice crackled in her earpiece. Something's wrong. Our people inside aren't responding. Get out of there. Now. Peter's grip tightened. We're not done talking. Maria grabbed her wine glass and threw it in his face. As Peter recoiled, she ran for the door, hearing chaos erupting behind her. She burst out into the rain, hearing Peter's footsteps close behind. Rivera, she screamed into the wire. Where are you? But there was only static in response. The street was empty, no sign of the police backup that was supposed to be watching. And Peter was getting closer.
Maria ran.
The rain made everything blur. Maria ran down the street, her heels slipping on wet pavement. She could hear Peter behind her, his footsteps echoing off building walls. The earpiece remained silent. No Rivera, no backup. She turned down an alley, nearly falling. A door stood propped open, light spilling out. Without thinking, she dove inside. Kitchen sounds, cooking smells. She'd stumbled into a restaurant's back entrance. Servers looked up in surprise as she ran through. Call the police, she shouted, but didn't slow down. Through the kitchen, past the dining room, toward the front. Behind her, she heard crashes, shouts. Peter following. She burst out onto a different street, lungs burning. Her phone, she needed to call someone. But before she could reach for it, a hand grabbed her arm, spinning her around. Enough running. Peter snarled, his perfect composure gone. Rain plastered his hair to his face, wine stains spreading across his expensive suit. Let me go. Maria struggled, but his grip was like iron. You just had to push, didn't you? Had to dig and search and ruin everything. He started dragging her toward a black SUV idling nearby. Now we have to do this the hard way. Like you did with Sarah? Maria fought harder. And Rachel and Lisa? Peter's face twisted. They made me do it, just like you're making me do this. Why couldn't you just be happy with what I gave you? Given me? You stole my life. Maria saw movement behind Peter, shadows in the rain. You watched me, controlled me, planned to kill me. Kill you? Peter laughed, an ugly sound. Oh, honey, death would be too easy. Ask Sarah. Ask Rachel. They're very much alive, just reformed. New names, new lives, new attitudes. Amazing what a few months of proper conditioning can do. The shadows moved closer. Maria kept him talking. They're alive? Where? Safe. Supervised. Living the lives I chose for them. Just like you will. He started pulling her toward the SUV again. A few months in the facility, and you'll be a whole new person. Obedient. Grateful. Just like the others. That's enough, Peter. They both turned. Jack stood there, gun raised. Behind him, Rivera emerged from the shadows with 2 other officers. More police cars appeared, lights flashing through the rain. Let her go, Rivera said, her own weapon trained on Peter. It's over. Peter's grip tightened painfully. Nothing's over. You have no idea who you're dealing with. One phone call, and dash. Your friends at the department are already in custody. Jack cut him off. So are your associates at the restaurant. While Maria kept you talking, we were rounding them up. All of them. You're lying. No more lies, Maria said quietly. We found them, Peter. Sarah, Rachel, Lisa, we found the facility. They're being rescued right now. For the first time, she saw real fear in Peter's eyes. His grip loosened just enough. Maria wrenched free, stumbling toward Jack and Rivera. Peter reached into his jacket. Don't dash, he started to shout, but 3 shots rang out. He fell, clutching his shoulder, the gun he'd been reaching for clattering to the wet pavement. As officers swarmed forward to secure him, Maria sagged against Jack. Rivera rushed over, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. You did good, Rivera said softly. They're really free. All of them. The raid on the facility just finished. We got his whole network. Maria watched as Peter was handcuffed, still struggling, still trying to assert control even now. She thought of those other women, finally being rescued from whatever prison he'd created for them. Women who, like her, had just wanted to be loved, not possessed. Take him away, she said quietly. I never want to see him again. 1 year later, Maria stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd gathered for the opening of the Freedom House Women's Shelter. Familiar faces looked back, Jessica, Jack, Rivera, and dozens of survivors from her support group. And in the front row, 3 women she'd come to know well over the past year, Sarah, Rachel, and Lisa. When I found those cameras in my bedroom, she began, I thought my world was ending. In a way, it was. The life I thought I had, the marriage I believed in, it all crumbled. But something stronger grew from those ruins. She touched the pendant she still wore, not a wire now, just a reminder. Peter didn't just steal years of our lives. He stole our trust, our sense of safety, our belief in ourselves. But he couldn't steal our strength. Not forever. The trial had been brutal. Peter's network reached further than anyone had imagined. Corrupt police, private security firms, even medical professionals who helped keep his facility running. But in the end, the evidence was overwhelming. Multiple life sentences, no possibility of parole. This shelter isn't just a building, Maria continued. It's a promise. A promise that no one has to face abuse alone. That there's always hope, always a way out, always people ready to help. The shelter would offer everything she wished she'd had: legal aid, counseling, job training, security. A safe place to rebuild shattered lives. The settlement from Peter's seized assets had funded it, turning his blood money into something healing. After the ceremony, Maria sat with Sarah, Rachel, and Lisa in the shelter's garden. They didn't talk about their time in the facility. Those scars were still too fresh. Instead, they talked about their new lives, their plans, their freedom. I started painting again, Sarah said quietly. She'd been an artist before Peter, before everything. First time in 6 years. I'm teaching, Rachel added. She'd moved to Seattle, started fresh. 2nd grade. Some days are hard, but mostly it feels like me again. Lisa just squeezed Maria's hand. She was still working through things, still healing. But she was free, and that was what mattered. Jessica found them there later, bringing coffee and news. The support group had doubled in size. 3 more women had come forward about similar experiences. The investigation was widening, uncovering more perpetrators, more victims. You started something, Jessica told Maria. Something important. Maria watched Max playing with Lisa's daughter in the garden. The little girl's laughter echoed off the shelter's walls, fresh and clean as rain. A sound of healing, of hope. Her phone buzzed, a text from Rivera about another case, another woman needing help. Maria smiled. This was her life now, helping others find their way out of the darkness she'd escaped. She thought about the cameras sometimes, wondering how she'd missed them for so long. But then she'd remember what really mattered wasn't what she hadn't seen then, but what she could see now. Strength in survival, power in unity, and the endless possibilities of a truly free life. The sun was setting behind the shelter, painting the sky in colors of hope. Maria stood, ready to help the next survivor find her way home. Not to a place of hidden cameras and controlled smiles, but to something real, something earned, something free.
Disclaimer: this channel does not support or tolerate any form of discrimination, racism, prejudice, or violation of human rights. The stories presented here are original and created by the author with the aim of promoting reflection, awareness, and dialogue. All content is developed with respect for diversity and the dignity of all people.